Hello and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski and today I am talking to the awesome Gordon Morrison. Gordon has recently successfully defended his thesis, but in this episode he wanted to talk about that experience before the viva when he just wanted to give up. Gordon wanted this episode to be an encouragement to other people, and I do hope that that is what this is for you. Hello, Gordon.
Emma, hello.
Thank you so much for being here. The first thing I really need to say to you is congratulations, because you are through. You're newly, well, working on corrections, but
Yes.
newly doctored.
Amazing. Still sounds good.
It's amazing, really amazing. And I am so grateful that in that moment you thought to contact me and say, can talk. I'd be happy to talk to people about that feeling that you're never going to finish.
Yes. I felt duty bound having found your podcast really a bit better about things when things were bad. So I felt maybe I owed you one.
Oh, bless you, bless you, bless you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, and I'm sure that this is going to be an experience that lots of people can relate to. And we'll get deep into that in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to ask the same question that I ask everybody, in terms of to tell us a little bit about your PhD journey.
Yeah. I mean, my background is I'm a golf club professional, which means I do spend most of my time coaching. And I did a master's in 2009, 2010 in sports psychology just to further educate myself, and took a little break after that. Usually after you finish studying, you don't want to study anymore. But then within 3-4 years, I had got the urge and the itch to go further. And a few of my colleagues were doing it. It was a growing trend in the profession to go for that level of education. So I decided to do sports psychology, a combination with motor control, PhD, investigating de-skilling, I suppose you could call it. But it was in sports, we have a phenomenon where people can, particularly simple skills, they can execute these skills, but then one day, often suddenly, they just can't execute the skill anymore. Maybe something like they call it dartitis in darts, where they can't let go of the dart. Cricket bowlers get it, and in particular golf. I'm a golf professional, so it was like hitting short shots onto the green. People just suddenly twitch and flinch, and so it was to investigate that.
Wow.
And I'm interested in skill development, so it was the opposite of that. Studying why do skills devolve? Why do they? That's probably not the right word, but why do people get de-skilled? So that was 2014. I met with Birmingham University, and they okayed my ideas, and I applied, and I started part-time more than 10 years ago. So that's why I got into it. It was just the sports psychology and the skill development were a big interest of mine.
Amazing. And mate, what an interesting area to be working in as well. So this was a journey for you.
Yeah.
Coming out of your professional experience. So you're a person who had a professional career behind you, already had a master's, and yet you still had those feelings of, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do this. So let's dive into that.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that journey through and how you navigated those kinds of thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, it was such an up and down experience. So working full time, I don't want to put people off, but working full time and doing a PhD, people told me this is going to be a challenge. I said, oh yeah. Maybe for you, but I'll organize myself.
Oh, I love that.
Fantastically well. But you have a busy day. Maybe you have a 12-hour day at work, and you come home and you had planned to study that night. Well, it gets put on the shelf, and that can sort of snowball. And, you start to initially started out with the idea that I'd publish 4 studies. That would be a great thesis.
Right.
But the workload of that was just astronomical. I tried to publish the first one and got refused 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And I thought, hey, this is not good enough quality work, is it? And a lot of doubts crept in. And anyway, I gave up on the publication element and just continued on. I did 4 applied studies, but which I think got me a lot of respect from the examiners in the end, because getting out there and working with people is messy, and it takes a lot of time.
Yes.
But the part-time element was a challenge. And then 2 years after starting, I mean, to be honest, I started it because I was a golf pro, but at the time the golf business wasn't thriving, and I was doing some part-time lecturing in a university in the winter in Sunderland, where I was based at the time. And that was my main reason for starting the PhD, really, was that Sunderland said to me, if you had a PhD, we could probably employ you more. But then 2 years in, I get a job offer in golf that's couldn't turn down. And I thought about quitting at that point. I thought, do I need this now? And I thought, well, I'm not the kind of person to quit, so I'm interested, and I'll keep going. But then 3 years later, another job change, and then COVID, and and so on. And a lot of these things threw obstacles in my way, like moving house. COVID meant I couldn't work with people for quite a long time. I took a leave of absence because one of the jobs was to go to China, and then that never happened because of COVID. So it was quite a lot of personal life chaos, and you're trying to keep this thing going. And then many times I thought about quitting, and I just thought, you know what, it's too much. I There's other things in life. Will it kill me if I quit? No, but I would say now I'm certainly glad I kept going,
Right. Right.
even though the last couple of years were very challenging. More or less all my spare time was put into the study. And well, I say that, I mean, spare time being, you know, time where I wasn't spent trying to have a life outside of my work. And
Right.
so it's really difficult making priorities. I think that's the thing. But one great tip I got was from one of the review meetings I had, was to just write a bit every day. You know, once you start writing, just write a paragraph, and that's something done. It's another brick in the wall. You're one step closer. And I kept that sort of resonated with me, really. But I really did think I wasn't going to finish.
So,
But yeah, go on. Sorry.
well, I think this, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Because lots of things were happening. And I think that um, this sense of life doesn't stop when you're doing the PhD. In
Mm.
fact, life might come at you in a much more intense way, because the mindset that you're in for the PhD is a more reflective, deeper thinking mindset. And then I always say people you're more sensitive when you're doing a PhD, because that's your mindset is in a different place. So things are coming at you. You need to earn money. You're working and all of that. So there is a lot coming at you. So when you said to yourself, "This is too much," it's because there is a lot. So like, not making it up. That is happening. But I think that the thing that I want to kind of come back to is what you said. I'm glad I kept going, and because I think there were going to be, I'm guessing, a lot of people listening to this podcast going, I think I'm probably done here. I think I need to give up now. Because this happens to just to say, everybody has those thoughts. Everyone has those thoughts. Some people more intensely than others. And for some people, it is right to give up. For some people, that's a right choice. Um, but for the people who are kind of wavering, um, can you tell us why you're glad that you kept going?
I think, had I quit, it was 2 years ago, was the biggest sort of a possible change of direction, where I realized I had a whole study to do. I had 2 years left, one whole study to do, needed to analyze and finish studies 2 and 3. I had only study 1 completed and a lit review, which was probably out of date at this stage. And I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do here. But I just wrote down a little plan. My supervisor encouraged me to write a plan as to how I would get it over the line. And that looked doable to me. When I wrote it down, I thought, well, you know, maybe I can do this. So that gave me the motivation to start. And I also found a place to write. You know, I found at home if I try to study at home, every 10 minutes you'd find a reason to stand up and go and get a cup of tea or look out the window. And so I went to the library. It was pretty quiet, and I learned a technique for time management called, or study management called the pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever
Yes.
come across that.
Yes. Tell us about it in case people haven't.
Like little, yeah, pomodoro means tomato in Spanish, I think, doesn't it? And so it's like take a little section. So you were to do 2 hours study, for example, but you were to take a 5 minute break every 25 minutes. And I found that relieved the exhaustion that I was experiencing after maybe, say, 3 or 4 hours. You know yourself, you sit down, you do 3 or 4 hours, and you just stand up and say, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And you might have to go to work after that, or
Yeah.
you've worked that day. And the Pomodoros, the 25 minutes and then taking a 5 minute break, just walk around, have a little cup of tea if you want, and then another 25 minutes and then a 5 minute break, and four of them. And then after that, you would have to take a longer break, let's say 10, 15 minutes. And that really helped me. I felt like mentally I wasn't draining my battery all the time. And I
Yes.
think it's evidence based. There is evidence that that's the case. So that was great. Two things I would say, or three things. I wrote a plan. I found a place I was, what would you say, working efficiently, the library. And I had this little kind of thing, and I still see it I've got my book in front of me. I kept a journal, and I would just write down 4 Ps. That was my goal was to do 4 Ps minimum a day. Like that was 4 Pomodoros.
Love
Um,
that.
and that worked for me, not for everyone maybe, but that got it moving. And then once it's moving, you have momentum, the motivation is a little better.
Oh, I love this. I love this. And I think there's two really important things to pick out of there. First of all, I think it is no surprise that in that last 2 years, in that last phase, because you're part-time, so those last 2 years, um, that's when it really kicks in terms of I think perhaps I'm done here.
Mm.
This is very, very common towards the end. And if you are getting towards the end, this is very common to think, oh, blimey, that's it, I'm done. This can be for a range of reasons. And that's the second thing that you talk about in terms of being tired. You might just be exhausted because if you are coming towards the end, especially if you're part time, you will be exhausted. And so tiredness can really start to, a kind of true fatigue can start to kick in. So it isn't that you can't do it, you're just really tired. So, like you say, in terms of finding ways to re energize yourself, that can be really important. But I think also you can get really bored towards the end. If you've been doing this for a long time, you can there's two things, isn't there? There's burnout and there's also bore out. You can be
Yeah,
bored. And so I think that sense of, again, finding a way to ignite and come back in, that can be another thing. There are other things at play as well towards the end. I think there's real fear in terms of, is this going to happen? Can I do this? Am I good enough? But I think those themes that you touched on in terms of that sense of time and of energy are really, really key.
absolutely. And you just doubt yourself.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
you
yes,
completely doubt yourself and your ability. I mean, to be honest, and I thought I had good command of the English language. I had to learn to write,
yes.
academically, and that involved paragraphs that were coherent, and I got a bit of help on that, or I found a bit of help on that, and keeping a storyline going through the PhD. I hadn't got it when I started to sort of do my last draft, so I had to go back and try and generate this like storyline, and it really felt like I was back at school, thinking, wow, how can I not do this?
Mm.
So it was, but looking back, I mean, those are skills I learned, the time management skills, the managing your energy. And at times when you are exhausted, it's dangerous to push yourself, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
And just take an hour, go for a walk. Maybe it's not sleep you need, but I found napping was a good.
Love a nap. I love a nap.
Yeah, they were fantastic. Even like half an hour nap and then get up, get going again, and you could do it.
Yes, and I know I go on and on about napping, but there's a lot of research evidence that napping is it allows your subconscious mind to process. It allows things to become clearer. You may wake up and have all sorts of do thoughts. So this is not taking to your bed in laziness. It's using a power ninja tool to maximize your brain.
Definitely. Oh, there is an evidence base to it. It's for sure. Your brain, especially when you're studying, my understanding is it burns a lot of glucose if you're studying and really thinking hard. So it's burning stuff at a heck of a rate, and you're going to run out. So you've got to A, eat, and B, rest if you want to think straight.
There you go. And that's a sports psychologist telling you that, people. And I think it is. I think you have to attend to your inner toddler. And it's like, if a toddler is having a tantrum, you're kind of like, do they need a snack? Do they need a rest? Do they need to go outside and play? And I think checking in with yourself in that way can be really, really helpful. Really helpful.
Yep. When I was having my pomodoros and my 5 minute break, I would have a flask of tea with me, and I'd have a little like energy bar or one of those cereal bars or something, a bit of fruit, and with the idea that I understand my brain is burning a lot of this kind of energy, carbohydrates, and that also helped. Maybe there was a slight placebo effect there too, but it was just nice to have a little 5 minute break, looking forward to your cup of tea and your biscuit, whatever. It was a little reward for doing your 25 minutes of hard graft.
I love it. I love it. Cup of tea, power of tea. And I think the sense of not underestimating what you can get done in 25 minutes. And I will put on the show notes, I will put the link to the Pomodoro information if people are interested in
Yeah,
following that up.
I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it can really work for some. Some people find it really full on and too intense, but for some people it's absolute game changer. And it really, as for you, Gordon, it really helped you to power through.
No. And you think you've done nothing in a month. You think at the end of a month, God, I've done nothing. But you go back in your journal and you count the P's and you see, oh, well, I did 60 P's. That's 30 hours. Wow, I did quite a bit here. So it can be that as well. You're kind of at the end of the month, you're also accountable to how much you've done.
I love it. I love it because it is that I've done nothing is pernicious, and it of course you're never going to do as much as you want to because we're super ambitious people, and so that sense of what I love there is that kind of that accountancy and that audit of like, look at all the ticks in the box, look at all the P's. I have done that. I have made progress. I have moved things forwards. Really, really important in terms of motivating yourself, especially in a moment where you think, blimey, this, I can't do this anymore.
No. And I look back at my journal just before our call, and I see if I had a penny for every time I wrote starting to go around in circles here, did about 5 P's, but not getting going on a coherent structure, things like that. Like, and then another one just below it, 2 days later, slow going. And it's just how it is, it's a slog. But it'll pass, and you'll get days where you're very productive, and then other days where you just, for whatever reason, it takes you 2 hours to get a diagram half right.
Yes. And I think because this is it's deep work. It's deep work. It's not just like rattling off some emails. It's got a different energy to it. And I think how gorgeous to have that conversation with yourself as well. I think journaling is so powerful in terms of, because you're noting those days when things did go well as well. But also you've got a place to bring it when it's hard, when it is hard.
Absolutely. And most people listening will be in the same situation I was when I started listening to you about 2 years ago, just at that juncture where they think, I've got to get this over the line, and I have so much to do, and I have so much going on in my life. But, it does pass. It's amazing how fast it goes by. And provided you, like that lady said to me, write a bit every day if you can. That was a great piece of advice. You'll get there.
Yes. I think that regular conversation, isn't it, with your PhD? I know for some people that might, because people have got different situations, that every day might not be possible. But that sense of getting in contact, like you say. We're not talking about writing reams every day, just even a thought towards your PhD, because you will be anyway every day. That sense of keeping that conversation going. Yeah,
Yeah, and just even like listening to a podcast that gives you a bit of reassurance. That
exactly.
I would count that.
I am aware of time.
Mhm.
Um, and just like the PhD eventually passes quickly,
Yeah,
these
there's a
these
deadline
these
somewhere.
these episodes will go really quickly. Before I ask you to give us some top tips, you've already given us so many good or wonderful gems. But I do just want to go back to something you said right at the beginning, where you were refused publications, and that you were worried that things weren't good enough. I wanted to pick up on that because this is so common. And remembering that the publication rate for journal articles, is about 80 to 90% get rejected. And so it doesn't mean that your work isn't good enough, as you know now, obviously, but in that moment when you get the rejection, and this may be happening to other people. So I just want to remind everybody that a desk rejection does not mean that that work is not really valuable. It just means that many, many desk rejections happen.
That's right. I mean, as you know, if you compare a publication, trying to publish something, and compare that to how your examiners treat you in the Viva, it's worlds apart. They will not have that. They will not be trying to destroy your work. They will try to understand your work, and this is in the Viva. But the publication thing is generally a pretty negative experience. But it's a bit of a wake up call too, and I try to do it by myself. You need partners. I think if you're going to do that, that would be my advice on that one.
Oh, that's gorgeous advice. And can you tell us a little bit about your Viva experience? Because we had a little chat before we started, and you said this lovely thing about kind of leaving the Viva room, and I'd like everybody, like, if you'd be happy to share that with everyone, um, because
Yes, I mean, with the vibe, I mean, I took, your guest that you had on one of your podcasts, Nathan from Viva Survivor. That would be one of my top tips. Whatever Nathan says, and you say, I would tend to go with that. And he suggested mock Vivas, and I have quite a few mock Vivas in the run up to my real Viva, and that helped immensely. And it was a 3 hour Viva, but after about 2 hours, 45 minutes, I thought, "Oh, these guys have hardly got started. I'm going to be in here all day." And then they started looking at each other and saying, have you any more questions to each other? And they said, no, no. And I just looked at my shoes and I thought, this is hardly it, is it? This feels pretty positive. I mean, if they fail me now after hardly attacking anything, and then I went away for a wee while and they took me back in and said, congratulations. I thought, wow, I was speechless.
amazing.
I mean, I just shook their hands, left. I had to go and catch a train, left, and went, whew. They must have thought that was strange. I hardly reacted. Such a shock.
Well, the thing
A
is,
shock and a relief.
yes, 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 yes. And you were saying about how, they were shaking your hand, being really positive about your work. And um,
Was there just going, oh, yeah, thanks. And I just, yeah. For my train, I just said, guys, I have to apologize. They asked me to come for a coffee. And I said, I have to apologize. I've got to run and get a train. I've got a flight to catch because I'm living in Norway. So I had to go to the airport. And I just thought that must have come across pretty weird. But I just got on my train and life went on.
amazing,
And it
amazing.
was, it was a major relief, but it only really hit like a few days later.
Yeah, I think that you can be really in shock in the Viva. But those moments where you're sitting there in the library going, this is never going to happen. And yet in that
Mm.
Viva, the positive feedback, the way in which people were responding to your work, recognizing the wisdom in that work, a really important thing to remember, that
Yes.
you're writing for an audience that wants to engage with your work.
Yes. And you have to be close to it. I think that's one of, I'd say, I know you always look for recommendations. You've got to, when you're approaching that period, good, bad, or indifferent, your work will have weaknesses, but if you're really on top, of your work and you understand the weaknesses. I think that comes up in the Mach 5, and
Yes.
you are very close to that thesis. It, it's, I took Nathan's advice and I had like post-its put in different pages, marking out the starts of chapters, significant areas, and so on. But I didn't really have to do that much because I knew I knew the research quite well, so I could answer without recourse to having to read the answers. So I think that that's a big thing, being close to your own research, and remember that they don't know as much about it as you do.
There's the thing. There is the thing. Um, Gordon, thank you so, so much. I just want to make sure that we haven't missed any of your top tips. Did you
Nope.
have anything extra
Maybe
to share?
I had a mentor, a guy who was familiar with a guy I knew from years ago, a psychologist who he just acted as a sounding board, and he was the guy who did the mock vivas with me mainly. I did one with my supervisor as well, which was also helpful. The podcasts and listening to people like yourself and Nathan, I think it's important. Maybe have a network. I had a small network of other people from my profession that were also doing PhDs. That was really supportive.
Mm.
And I think maybe that was it. And I also had some copies of other PhDs that had already been completed, and they were useful. Just want an example of how people write the end of a chapter, or write their general discussion. It was there, and I found that really useful. So that would be my list, I think, of tips.
Golden, golden. Um, well, once more, congratulations, Dr. Morrison. Um, and thank you so much for your time today.
I hope it helps.
I'm
Hope it
sure it
helps.
will. Thank you, and
Thank
thank
you.
you all for listening.